Football Manager is a series of football management simulation video games developed by British developer Sports Interactive and it's glorious! But in the 80s, it was not a thing. However, Kevin Tom's Football Manager was a thing. How much of a thing was it? Big enough to get two teenagers from Shropshire, that's them right there. Yes, the game was big enough that these two brothers played it a lot, but felt that it was missing some things. So one day, the brothers looked at their BBC microcomputer system, and with both of them having a knack for coding, they looked at one another and one of them said, "Let's make a football game that we'd want to play." And they got to coding. They coded really hard. One of them even dropped out of uni to code even harder. Whoa. Would you look at that? It's the 1990s. Quite a lot had happened, but in the meantime, the Collier brothers had completed the game. They promptly changed the name to European Champions after realizing the folly with their initial title. Ah, son of a bitch! And proceeded to take their incredibly detailed code to various gaming companies to see if they will publish their game. Please publish our game.
Nope.
Excuse me, Electronic Arts, do you want to publish our game? Sorry boys, no can do. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to take this. It's FIFA on the other line. Things did look dire for a minute as no one wanted to publish their game, but the Colliers kept on trying and finally, they found Domark Software. Domark did take a look at their game more closely than all other publishers up to this point.
24 hours later.
Okay lads, we shall publish your game, but we need a punchier title. Something that will really have some staying power. Oh, I know, how about we call it Championship Manager? The Colliers then launched their development company Intellect, and Championship Manager was launched on September 1st, 1992 on the Amiga and Atari ST. It only sold about 20,000 copies and reviews were mixed, most of all the negative critique being due to the text-heavy approach and lack of graphics compared to contemporaries such as Premier Manager and The Manager. But that didn't matter to the Collier brothers. Their foot was on the door, there were people out there who loved their game, and Domark wanted them to keep going. So the brothers took their original code and they went back to coding over the next year. They improved on it, converted it to the C programming language, making it harder, better, faster, stronger. Player names instead of just numbers and positions, in-match commentary, improved loading times, the implementation of the FA Premier League. There were so many features. And what did they call it? Championship Manager 93-94. But how big was this game compared to the first one? Well, Championship Manager Italia came out of it with Serie A and B available to play, and they kept it fairly updated. People really liked this game. They liked it even more that the Collier brothers coded so hard that they were able to make update discs twice. Replayability is important, and seeing the changes that happen in real life being reflected in the game certainly helped with that, as did getting Neil Lamptey from Anderlecht if you were trying to make a Champions League winning bid. But while those update discs for Championship Manager made their waves, the Collier brothers' success led them to create their own company officially, Sports Interactive. They now have better gear, a supportive enough publisher, and people like their games more now. So they went back to coding really hard. But while they were doing that, they met this one bloke named Miles Jacobson who gave them Blur concert tickets for an advanced copy of their next game.
That is bloody lovely!
That same guy sent them a fax a few days later with plenty of feedback for all the coding they'd done. The Colliers saw something in that feedback to where they invited the lad out for some pints at a pub in North London, and they became really good friends. This new friend helped them strengthen their contract with Domark, and in turn, the Colliers were happy to have Miles on board as part of the Sports Interactive team, albeit in an unofficial capacity. For now. After that whole thing, more time passes by, and on September 22, 1995, it was time for Championship Manager 2. At first, It looked like an even more updated version of the original Championship Manager. It even included cool photos of all the grounds of the teams in it, up-to-date rosters, and stuff. But that wasn't the only addition.
Huh?
You could select the league you wanted to play in out of multiple options, and because Sports Interactive coded so hard before, during, and after the game's release, that meant more update discs in the next 2 years for the game that did more than just update the rosters and fix known bugs. What are those updates, you ask? There's this Bossman ruling thing being reflected along with the rule changes that came in real life, multiple non-British leagues that you can now run, such as Italy, and folks started to see the trend of certain bargain buys that become club legends, such as Alan Fedis and Viktor Leonenko.
Several months later.
The Championship Manager Season 97-98 disc update came out, and jaws dropped to the floor with it. 9 leagues are now playable, and players now are able to run 3 leagues at the same time instead of just 1. Hey, do you want to prove that your favorite Premier League team is above those fancy teams over in the Italian and Spanish leagues? You can make a save out of this. Additionally, try added control over your tactics, where you can even select your set piece takers. Or how about having a database editor that lets you customize everything to your heart's content? This was the biggest leap the series had made thus far, and with it, Championship Manager 97-98 was the top-selling PC game of 1997 in the UK. After the CM 97-98 disc update, they knew they had something special. So you wanna know what they did? They took a nap. I'm just kidding, they coded really hard again. So time passed, and then on March 26, 1999, Championship Manager 3 arrived on the scene. New user interface and menu system, an improved match engine, customizable training schedules, more cup competitions from around the world, like the Football Conference in England, 15 leagues in total, including some from outside of Europe, like Japan, and Argentina, and Oh, Sports Interactive also decided that rather than just have you and your mates chat about who's the better football manager in these games, you could put that to the test now because you can play Championship Manager in multiplayer mode. Either through LAN or the internet. You can make a save out of this. With your friends. You do have friends, right? Moving on, the reviews were great, and much like the past 2 major entries, Sports Interactive would release season update discs. The 99-2000 edition added more players, it made its way onto this Mac thing that was becoming a big deal thanks to this guy, and they added Major League Soccer into the catalog of leagues you can use. The 2000-2001 update continued to add on more leagues, and with it, it was also the debut of an official data editor for your in-game needs. Sports Interactive went for their first ever 3rd update of a cycle, and in it, they created what many argue to be the magnum opus of the Championship Manager series as a whole. Championship Manager 2001-2002. This update would proceed to implement the new EU-regulated transfer system and also feature the new attribute masking mode, aka Fog of War. Other new additions included the ability to send players away for surgery, player notes, player comparisons, and improved media and board interactions. But lads, this was the game where certain players ascended to legendary status, even if most of them didn't do that much in real life. We're talking players like Cherno Samba, Mark Kerr, Kennedy Bakir Suglu, Tonton Zola Mukoko, Mike Duff, Tom Madeira. Wait, that last one was a self-insert by some volunteer Portuguese scout? Yeah, I can see how SI and Miles got annoyed enough to remove him by the winter transfer update. But nevertheless, those players shaped the absolute imaginations of many, many players who really liked this game. Speaking of Miles, he's super duper official on the Sports Interactive team at this point. having gone from being part-time as a managing director to making it his full-time job during this cycle. Also, do you have an Xbox? Well, you're in luck because you get an exclusive Championship Manager 0203 update game for it. But while that version happened, Sports Interactive had to keep on innovating further to continue the success of the series, which is why they did, in fact, code really hard. But at the same time they were coding really hard, Domark Software, now known as Eidos Interactive, had been taking notice of what Sports Interactive had done. But Eidos didn't like the idea of giving up control to Sports Interactive, who also didn't like the idea of giving up control of their intellectual property over to Eidos, so in this weird stalemate behind the scenes, Eidos Interactive decided to create a new studio in 2003, just a few months before the next edition of Championship Manager was due to come out. The new studio was called Beautiful Game Studios. According to Eidos, they were just going to create some fun little platform games for them. There's nothing suspicious at all about the name choice, or the logo, or anything. Seriously, this will totally not cause any tensions down the line whatsoever. Foreshadowing is an indication of something that will happen in the future, often used as a literary device. Anyways, March 28, 2003 came around, and with it, so did Championship Manager 4. The greatest leap the series had ever taken. Especially now that the game is sporting a graphical 2D, top-down graphical view of the match on top of everything that has been built in the last few years. And being able to see how your tactics worked on screen with moving dots and the like over just text got a ton of people hooked. It sold like hotcakes, becoming the fastest selling PC game of all time in the UK, but for once, not everyone really liked the game. It was kind of mixed reviews, just due to the game's processing causing things to take a bit longer, and some bugs. So with that in mind, the update in CM0304 wouldn't take long after the initial Championship Manager 4 release to come out to patch all of those things up and add some more cool stuff, like a pre-game database editor and the ability to save previously viewed matches as well. It's the year 2005, and everything is about to change. Remember that whole Beautiful Game Studios thing from 2 years ago? It reared its ugly head, and there's consequences for it. Let's take a trip back in time as to how it all happened.
So, in conclusion, we want full control of Championship Manager, and as the ones who publish it, your services will no longer be required. Beautiful Game Studios will take over from here once you wrap up with the Championship Manager 4 cycle in the next year and develop their own code. And of course, we will be keeping the intellectual property for ourselves.
Wait a minute. Not only are you kicking us out from the game we created after 11 years, a game with the most comprehensive source code on the market for the sport of football, but you just want the Championship Manager IP?
Yes, consumers make decisions based on brand names, and it's not like this whole video game making thing is difficult or anything. We've got a whole new studio that will make it to our whim, so yeah, we're keeping the IP. It's not like you guys can do anything without the brand name anyway.
You know what? Keep it. The name and IP are yours. We'll just, be taking our source code and database resources with us now.
Eidos Interactive proceeded to maintain the Championship Manager name and rights. Beautiful Game Studios made the next few Championship Manager games over the next decade, and they, let's just say there's a reason why those games don't get made anymore. Anyways, back to Sports Interactive, who now had their source code and database info, but they needed to come up with a different name for their next game. How about we just call it Football Manager like those games back in the early 80s? Sports Interactive did that, and soon enough, the development of their next game was off to the races as they all coded really hard. But they did realize that they were missing something essential to the operation. A publisher. But then these guys showed up. Sega! After negotiating to keep their own independence as a studio and getting Sega to fork up twice the amount of their initial offer, The folks at SI could just focus on coding real hard as a deal was made for the Japanese giants to be the ones to publish their games moving forward.
Several months later.
November 2004 marked the release of Football Manager 2005 to both Windows and Mac, as SI improved on what they'd done with the Championship Manager 4 cycle and optimized it, along with adding certain things like being able to taunt opposing managers to create mind games and further rivalries. Although at the same time, it would be faced with certain copyright issues, such as having to change the names of certain players, teams, and leagues due to it. On top of the game selling well in Europe and people really liking the game, Football Manager 2005 would mark the first time in which the game would be released in North America, although it'd be known as Worldwide Soccer Manager.
It's called soccer!
Don't worry, that bit gets fixed in about 5 years or so. Also, it was good timing on SI's part because this decision happened right at the height of Freddy Adu Mania in the United States, where he'd already made his debut at 14 for DC United in the MLS, and he was hyped up to be the next Pelé. But could he live up to that potential? Or how about this Leo Messi kid over in Barcelona that Rangers manager Alec McLeish is about to miss out on because he refuses to listen to his Football Manager playing son? Can he live up to his potential? You can make a save out of this. Oh, also, Sports Interactive also managed to get their game banned in China because they listed Tibet and Taiwan as being their own countries instead of being a part of China, which, well, controversy aside, Sports Interactive would continue that momentum by taking the approach of making their releases based on the upcoming year, much like many other sports titles in the market as the studio grew bigger in size and in budget due to being under the Sega umbrella. So in October 2005, it would be time for Football Manager 2006. The new entry kept the ball rolling with an updated roster, some gameplay adjustments in aspects like adding some extra leagues, improved team talks, simplified training, and in-game help screens. This was also the first edition of the Football Manager series to make its debut on console, as it was released on the Xbox 360 in April 2006. It was also around this time that the Philippine Football Federation was tipped about Phil and James Younghusband's Filipino lineages, which proceeded to lead those two men having more than 100 caps each for the Azkals during their playing careers. How did that happen exactly? Some unknown person was playing the game, looked up their profiles, saw that bit of intel, and got the Filipinos on the line immediately. Just your typical weekday on an FM save while hunting for dual nationals when trying to get your country of birth to win their first World Cup. Or their sixth. You can make a save out of this. While SI was not reinventing the wheel by any stretch, people seemed to really like the game regardless of it. But when it comes to some reinvention and improvement, well, SI goes right back to coding really hard, and by the tail end of 2006, it is time for Football Manager 2007 to provide all of those things and more. There were so many new and revised features. 100 new features! For example, SI unleashed a revamped scouting engine, allowing for more realistic scouting of potential stars. Your scouts were also learning from their experiences, because when they learn, they retain that knowledge and become smarter, which means they end up finding better players, which leads to you winning trophies as a manager, and then you become a club legend, which means more people will love you. We can all use the extra hug or two, okay? When you add this new scouting stuff to an improved youth team system where the method for regen players is completely revamped, board interactions being improved, pre-game talks, being able to create feeder clubs so you can loan players more easily so that they can develop because the fan base requested it for years, it led to almost universal critical acclaim on release. So after another cycle, we roll on through to late 2007 and on to Football Manager 2008. Sports Interactive's improvements on the current features of last year's game continued, the finance system got a revamp, transfers and loans all got put in one place, face-gen-based regen photos became a thing, you could play in a bunch of international competitions, and, well, they got for instance FA to agree on letting their license be used in-game again, along with the Dutch national team and Italian teams of Sampdoria and Fiorentina. It was an addition that needed to get patched a few times during the course of its life cycle, But it wasn't the best look for a ton of those who'd stuck with the game since its Championship Manager days, so not everybody really loved this game. Except for Everton. They did love the game, because they signed a whole deal with Sports Interactive, allowing them to use the game's database to scout players and opposition, and given that the Collier brothers are longtime supporters of the club, at least something good came out of it. But Sports Interactive had something else they'd been cooking in the lab, another step in the evolution of their game as they got to coding even harder than in previous years. By the time that they were done, the next step of the Football Manager series would take place in November 2008, as Football Manager 2009 made its way into the market, with a 3D game engine. But I like the text and the dots, and change is scary. Fear not, you can still use those features. Please stop crying about it like a petulant child on this Twitter thing that's becoming a bigger deal with each passing day. Additionally, players were now able to play as a female or male manager. The player ratings now have a decimal point for more precise grading, press conferences to build rapport with journalists, the finance and transfer systems have been completely reworked, and improvements onto other features such as assistant manager interactions, training, tactics, the whole nine. Just a shame that folks could barely access the game at launch because Sega and SI's copy protection system servers basically got DDoSed when people tried to activate their game during the first few days. Thankfully, they did eventually get it all fixed up and made it to at least 300,000 units sold in the United Kingdom. Reviews on it were fairly good as well, although the 3D engine was definitely something they need to fine-tune in the same manner that the 2D engine was over the last few years of development. There was also this whole multiplayer thing they were trying with Football Manager Live during the same cycle, which was a little different compared to the usual formula, but it felt mostly like SI's way of testing multiplayer features in a massive environment in the current age for future installments of their main series, as it did eventually shut down its servers in 2011. So, after a somewhat tumultuous year, there was more hard coding, and in late 2009, it was time for Football Manager 2010. SI started to fine-tune that fancy 3D engine from last year with more animations, stadiums, and whatnot. It gave us the match analysis tool, it included some more national teams, and you can make changes from the touchline by shouting instructions from the dugout instantly. The database editor also now had the option to add new divisions to existing leagues, or to add an entirely new league to the game's database. So if you wanted to make the entirety of England's 20-tier system, or your own worldwide Super League, you can make a save out of this.
No, don't.
FM10 was an improvement on what FM09 did, so you know the drill by now for Sports Interactive. Eat, sleep, code really hard, repeat.
Many months later.
It's late 2010, and it's time for Football Manager 2011 to get its turn in the limelight. Within it, agents were enhanced to act differently and have personalities, because being blood-sucking vampires is not a personality trait. But this change does further enhance the contract negotiations with a player, thus making this new live contract negotiation system one of the most dynamic features in the game. Oh, in-game press conferences also got a revamp so that the press can grill you even harder. Like that one time when you lost the game 3-2 after conceding 2 goals in stoppage time. On top of those things, along with enhancements of the match analysis area, SI really got some good feedback from the Spanish and Danish communities in terms of how B teams and amateur teams work within clubs, so they revamped that entirely to make it more accurate to how it is in real life. Additionally, this was around the time where some journalist graduate and MA student released a video documentary entitled Football Manager, More Than Just a Game, following one player of this wonderful, cruel game as he tried to make the transition from playing FM to being a genuine gaffer. Somewhere in England, a young wolf still was taking notes. Then we had Football Manager 2012 the next year, with some more improvements with scouting, 3D match improvements, You could use different tones to how you say things to your players and media, and you could now add and remove any nations and leagues at any point in time during your save. It was also the first game in which would require the use of Steam software, meaning users must activate the game online before they're able to play. But why did this become a thing? Sega! People were quite upset about it, to say the least. But that was going to be the nature of the beast moving forward for the FM series because Sega's worries about piracy and their tendency to put the nouveau on everything they publish. But life moves on, and so does SI, because within the calendar year, Football Manager 2013 rolled around, and it got announced in a full-fledged press conference by Sports Interactive on Football Manager's YouTube channel. During that presser, it was announced that they were putting in so many features. These features included the addition of a director of football, being able to give certain roles to other staff that managers would have to do themselves in previous games, taxes, a new way of making loan deals, and the addition of classic mode and challenge modes, one in which you could play for a full season faster, while the other was various scenarios that you could take on from being undefeated to having to play with only your youth academy players. You can make a save out of this. FM13 was well received, including getting the highest ever Metacritic score for a Football Manager game, along with selling nearly 950,000 copies during its life cycle. It also led to Azerbaijani student Vugar Huzinzadeh being promoted to be the manager of FC Baku's reserve team based on his success with years of playing Football Manager. The show must go on, and it does, as we reach the end of the year 2013, and that means that SI has Football Manager 2014 ready to go, and they managed to integrate it in full with Steam Workshop, meaning you can now share all your tactics, face packs, league mods, and beyond within it. There's revamps to the transfer module, like loan back clauses, you can do renegotiations with current players, star players can now have testimonials if they've been at the club for long enough. Even the news items are color-coded now so you can sort through and handle things as they come in your inbox. All in all, another solid entry, and FN14 even got nominated for a BAFTA in the Best Sports Game category. I mean, it didn't win, but look, sometimes you take the participation trophies and acknowledgement when you can get it. Also, some 33 or 34-and-a-half-year-old had the genius idea of doing an entire stand-up routine called Football Manager Ruined My Life. Wherever he is, I hope he's doing well. Another year, and we're on to the next one. Yes, that means it's Football Manager 2015 time, and I mean, 2,000 new animations to improve the 3D engine is pretty impressive, especially when it involves things like player models being improved, ball physics getting more realistic, improved shots and passes, the whole 9 yards. On top of an improved user interface, managers now can choose between being a tracksuit manager or a tactical manager when designing a new avatar. Oh, and that whole Twitch thing that's been taking off? Well, the game integrates with it now, so people can stream it online, and that's pretty neat, as there's been a wave of creators across multiple platforms at this point that are starting their journeys and have another avenue to really get their name out there. Oh look! Another calendar year goes by, we are in November of 2015, and that means it's time for Football Manager 2016. Sports Interactive realized that the whole Twitch integration thing was a good idea last year, and well, they expanded on it with Fantasy Draft Mode, in which multiple players can play together and draft players with a fixed budget to fight for bragging rights, and who gets to be the one to talk smack to all his friends on group chats for the next week. You can also now customize how your manager looks, and create your own club from the logo to the kits with Create a Club mode. Also, the match tactics and set pieces got an overhaul, while this company called Prozone partnered up with SI to provide analysis to your matches, so that you can have real data and stuff to help you be the best that you can be. It also ended up selling about 1 million copies by the end of its life cycle, so yes, people really like the game. Things are on track for FM as they have— Knock knock, it's China. Translate your game. We will not ask again. Sports Interactive cited the numbers as not being big enough for a simplified Chinese translation, so they chose to not translate it. The lack of an official translation in Chinese for the game over the last few years eventually caused those nerds to blow up the Steam reviews of the game. And the review bombing kept going until the following year's edition of Football Manager 2017, where Sega had to be the ones to step in and promise a translation in traditional Chinese to try and quell that crowd.
Did you really think that we would forget?
Is it a good time to mention that Brexit was happening around this time, and it basically made playing as saving the United Kingdom that much more complicated? Because yeah, SI had to reflect those changes in-game too. Oh, and they added some extra social media with a Twitter-themed view of fans and players' thoughts, and the ability for you to take a photo of your face and scan it onto the 3D model of your manager. The match engine also continued to see improvements with its presentation, animations, and enhanced AI. After a whirlwind of a yearly cycle, Sports Interactive got back to coding really hard, and on November 10th, 2017, they unveiled Football Manager 2018. FM18 was rather ambitious in some ways, as it introduced a dynamics team morale system, which allows managers to see team hierarchies and a little more in-depth team cohesion rating. The scouting mechanic also got an overhaul, with it being more lifelike, with scouts' knowledge of players scaling between 0 and 100%. It was a rewarding way of unearthing the best Wonder Kids out of South America, paying pennies on the dollar for them, and using their services to make your European underdog team become Champions League powerhouses in 5 to 10 years. You can make a save out of this. It also did get all the extra bells and whistles that comes with improving an in-house engine, so with all those things, it led to people really liking the game. It also somehow got onto the Nintendo Switch for the first time with Football Manager Touch. Although I think that's probably because someone at Sega finally got the cue that the PSP was long dead by this point and the Vita was about to go the way of the dodo. After more real hard coding and adjusting through the calendar year, it was time for Football Manager 2019 to enter the scene, and with it came another one of the modern game wonders of football like it did in real life, VAR. This will in no way, shape, or form be the difference between victory and defeat in an important game for many aspiring managers playing this entire game. Oh, you motherfucker! So FM19 had an overhaul to the training mechanic in order to give players the ability to explore more training options. And they got the Bundesliga license for the first 3 tiers of German football. Even though the German national team's license was not one they had, but let's face it, it's not like anybody really plays this game to be an international team manager in the first place. On to Football Manager 2020, where the team at SI really decided to take the scenarios from the challenge mode from years back and actually implement them accordingly to what the visions are for certain teams in real life. Whether it's saving a team at the brink of financial ruin from relegation and beyond, focusing on signing players under a certain age to fit with the club's vision, winning the Champions League if you have Middle East money like these two chuckleheads. There's a development center now as well, so you can really use it to take a look at the future of your club, plus new tweaks to add to the authenticity, like your club captain drawing up a code of conduct and list of fines for disciplinary breaches. FM20 also was a launch title for the Google Stadia. Why exactly, I do not know, but it was there. And Manchester United just dropped a hot new lawsuit. And it's against Sports Interactive and Sega?
Hey, yo!
Apparently, infringing on trademark is the new excuse for we need more money from the Glazers.
I prefer really not to speak.
They'll just be known as Manchester UFC or Man UFC in the game going forward. And as we go through the cycle of FM20, well, the pandemic happened. People had to stay home, meetings at work basically got moved to the likes of Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and to be honest, I'm actually quite impressed we even got a Football Manager 2021 to begin with, due to those particular set of challenges faced by the studio. A collaboration with Sports brought in XG as a metric to measure how you were doing in-game, The presentation of the 3D match engine was arguably at its best, from its animations to being able to see sky confetti rain down on you every time you won a title. Recruitment meetings were introduced to help you scout even harder to find the likes of Yosufa Mukoko and Eduardo Camavinga before cursing whichever Oyo team or Real Madrid got to them first. You can pester agents about whether a player would be interested in coming to your team, and even most of the Serie A licenses came along to the party, except for Juventus, who decided to be a bunch of zebras about it. Well, at least they still have Cristiano Ronaldo. Hey, do you only have a console and are upset that FM games haven't come out on it for almost a decade? You're in luck, it's back on the Xbox. Oh, what's that? Someone on the research team discovered a half-Chilean player in Blackburn Rovers, and the entirety of Chilean football Twitter proceeds to convince their FA to call him up for their international squad? Only in FM, baby! Although people were enjoying the game and glad that there was a distraction to what was going on outside, there was still a worldwide pandemic to deal with, and SI had to continue doing its work remotely. But with more experience in that environment under their belts, they coded really hard to eventually give us Football Manager 2022 at the tail end of 2021. Cysports saw people like the XG getting introduced and went, oh, here's a whole data hub with many charts and graphs with all sorts of information. You can even ask your analysts to get you specific data if you want to be an even bigger nerd about this game. There's a new staff meeting system with nearly 4,000 new dialogue options introduced and the ability to explore a wider range of topics. Also, because this one guy won a Champions League during this time window where no one expected him to, the white center back role was also introduced in the game. But if you needed someone really tall to jump really high and score a lot of goals doing that, congratulations! Lorenzo Luca is the wonder kid you could grab on a steady bid to do that for you for the next decade. And thus, we move on through another cycle with people really liking the game and being one of the top played games on Steam, even cracking the top 10 on the platform during January 2022. Speaking of which, it's a new year, some folks are getting back to the offices, Sports Interactive teams hard at work on their next game, and then some American guy who sings way too much about loan deals while playing their games drops this gem on the Twitter timeline. Much like Charles Barkley, it was going to start a dialogue. It went about as well as expected. While Football Manager 2023 didn't bring forth a massive graphics overhaul like folks would want, it did continue to improve on its features, and well, the UEFA license was acquired, so now you could hear the Champions League anthem automatically as you enter one of those matches instead of having to play it yourself on a separate YouTube tab. We also got an improvement to AI managers, a new support confidence system. Because your board yelling at you wasn't bad enough, you now have the supporter groups doing it too. The squad planner was introduced along with an improvement to agent interactions. It also made its debut onto the PS5 and it'd be the first entry of the series in a Sony console outright. Along with its handheld and touch versions, the game would go on to be one of SI's most profitable ever, becoming the fastest title in series history to record more than 2 million unique players. But certain old heads who'd been around the block for quite some time weren't as satisfied, if you will. It's something that would even be brought up by SI themselves, as during the middle of 2023, Myos Jacobson himself would drop a pretty big dev blog entry detailing the future of Football Manager as a whole, as Football Manager 2024 would be the end of an era. No, literally, it's going to be that because Football Manager 2025 next year is going to be on the Unity engine, and those who are clamoring for better graphics are going to get what they're looking for. At least, that's the idea. Also, women's football is going to be making its debut in FM25 as well. But anyways, FM24 is about to come out, or past come out depending on when this goes live, and so far into it, these features are pretty big, such as being able to transfer your FM23 save over to FM24 seamlessly. No questions asked. We finally get a set piece overhaul, an intermediary feature to sell off unwanted players with more ease, significant enhancements to ball movement, physics, and the like in the match engine, setting goals for your players to achieve to get newer deals, the man who finally proved he isn't a bald fraud by winning a Champions League without Lionel Messi, basically causing a whole new position to be added on, the J-League finally making its triumphant debut. It is a ton to take in, but it does feel that this chapter of Football Manager is going to close out in style. Speaking of which, why am I still here talking to you about this? I already lost more than a week's worth of time on the beta. I'm gonna go play Football Manager 2024 now. Okay, bye!